The year 1933 dawned on a Germany still grappling with the echoes of the Great War. Its Jewish citizens, though less than 1% of the population, were deeply interwoven into the fabric of the nation. Many, like Gunther Stern, recalled an idyllic childhood in Hildesheim. It was a town of cobblestone streets and centuries-old buildings. His father, Julius, a man of boundless energy, ran a dry goods store there. His mother, Hedwig, with her dark, soulful eyes, penned witty limericks. She filled their high-ceilinged apartment with laughter. In the rural village of Josbach, Manfred Steinfeld's family lived next to the town well. They were one of only 6 Jewish households among 419 residents. Their lives seemed secure, despite the distant rumble of political change. Victor Brombert's parents, Jacob and Vera, had settled in Leipzig. They had fled the Russian Revolution in 1917. Now stateless, they found peace in Germany. These families, like 100,000 other German Jews, had fought for the Kaiser in World War I. They believed in their homeland. Their loyalty was etched in the memory of 12,000 fallen Jewish soldiers. But on January 30, 1933, a cheerful lilt shattered that illusion of security. Dr. Heinrich Hesse announced, "Something wonderful has happened today. Adolf Hitler has been made the new chancellor," he proclaimed. Almost immediately, the systematic dismantling of Jewish life began. Victor Brombert, then a child, recalled a terrifying train journey. Men with swastika armbands brutally dragged an older couple off, accused of sneaking currency out of Germany. The casual cruelty was a harbinger of what was to come. In schools, the insidious nature of Nazi propaganda became apparent. Gunther Stern, once a vibrant student, found his non-Jewish friends retreating. Then, they vanished entirely. During choir, after a classmate questioned how Jews could sing a German youth song, Gunther and other Jewish students were made to sit out. The rest sang Deutsche Jugend heraus. History classes became chilling exercises in erasure. Students were handed razor blades. They were instructed to cut pages detailing Jewish accomplishments from their textbooks. The teacher advised, "Be sure to leave enough room on the margins so you can paste the new pages into the book." Physical violence escalated from isolated incidents to a normalized terror. Gunther was ambushed and beaten by 5 schoolboys. He limped home, bruised and battered physically, as well as emotionally. His father Julius suffered a similar fate. He was jumped and beaten by men spewing anti-Semitic curses. His face was covered with cuts and bruises. By 1936, state-sanctioned violence was brazenly evident. Hitler's occupation of the Rhineland brought military convoys rattling through towns daily. SA brownshirts openly chanted threats. "Go, get the Jews," they cried. "When Jewish blood flows from the knife, that time will be so much better," they threatened. Jewish stores were stoned. Windows were smashed by Hitler Youth. Synagogues became no-go zones, sometimes guarded by attack dogs. The myth that World War I veterans like Manfred's uncle Solomon would be protected crumbled. He still proudly wore his Iron Cross. But could such a symbol truly offer protection against this escalating brutality? The legal codification of dehumanization arrived with the Nuremberg laws in 1935. These decrees stripped Jews of citizenship. They reduced them to second-class status. They criminalized mixed marriages. This cemented a racial hierarchy that deemed only those with 4 non-Jewish German grandparents as racially acceptable. Arthur Louis Stephan's father was released from Oranienburg concentration camp that year. He returned a shadow of his former self, missing most of his teeth. His once solid build had withered. He lamented, "People are taking advantage of the situation as Jewish businesses were forcibly sold for paltry sums." The turning point came in November 1938, ignited by a desperate act. Over 12,000 Polish-born Jews had been brutally expelled from Germany. They were trapped for a week on a desolate frontier, shivering in rain and cold, starved and without shelter. Among them were the family of Herschel Grinspan, a 17-year-old Jewish boy in Paris. On November 7, 1938, in a desperate act of reprisal, Grinspan shot a German diplomat at the Third Reich embassy. Stephan Louis saw the ominous headline, "JW kills German attaching in Paris." Nazi propaganda immediately seized upon it. They declared it the first shot of the Jewish war. Joseph Goebbels and other Nazi leaders, within hours, plotted their response. A long-planned, violent mass action against Jews was now given its pretext. The Night of Broken Glass Kristallnacht erupted on November 9 and 10, 1938. The widespread destruction and mass arrests that followed intensified the desperate urgency to flee. But escape was not simple. It was a labyrinth of paper walls and agonizing choices. Nazi laws had systematically plundered Jewish assets. They restricted cash transfers from $10,000 to a mere 10 Reichmarks, approximately $4. This made emigration financially impossible for many. US, a W, but in deciding abrasions of times, immigration policies, particularly the 1930 public charge mandate, demanded affidavits of support. This created a significant barrier. In 1933, only 16 out of 74 German refugees in Rotterdam were granted visas. Was escape truly possible for most? For Gunther Stern, the realization was stark. His family's only American relative, Uncle Benno, could only sponsor one person. His parents, with voice low and solemn, delivered the crushing news. Uncle Benno's affidavit has come through for you alone, they told him. Gunther was shocked and apprehensive about leaving the rest of his family behind. His mother was struggling with this decision as much as he was. His father, Julius, in a poignant farewell at the Hildesheim railway station, drew him close. He whispered, "You have to be like invisible ink. You will leave traces of your existence when, in better times, the invisible ink becomes visible again," his father said. As Gunther boarded the SS Hamburg, his mother wept. He vowed to remember those words. Manfred Steinfeld's mother, Paula, made a similar agonizing decision. The U.S. Immigration Act of 1924 had filled the German and Austrian quota, creating a backlog. Paula's sister Minna, in Chicago, agreed to take Manfred. But he has accepted only one child per family. In July 1938, Manfred, just 14, left his sobbing mother on a German railroad platform. Her last words were a stark warning: "Be quiet and do not draw attention to yourself," she instructed. He understood the cruel contradiction of her actions. He knew her immense agony in sending him away for his safety. He was deathly afraid he would never see her again. After an 11-day, often stormy, journey on the SS New York, Manfred arrived in New York Harbor at 5 a.m. The fog-draped Statue of Liberty offered both inspiration and comfort. He finally felt safer than he had since leaving home. In Chicago, he was met by his Aunt Minna. His new family of 8 now lived in a cramped 3-bedroom apartment. Manfred slept on the living room sofa for 4 years. He quickly Americanized his name to Manny. He took on a 5 a.m. paper route and a second job at a drugstore. He bought a second-hand bicycle and enjoyed cowboy movies. His 12-year-old brother, Herbert, was fortunate enough to emigrate to Palestine. He settled in a children's village. But for many, escape routes were rapidly closing. Guy Stern's parents, still in Germany, sent letters with coded language. "If one way doesn't turn out, try always a new way of proceeding," they wrote. The worst part for Guy was not knowing if they were all right. He later received a note from his mother with a Warsaw postmark. "We have a room here in the ghetto and we are managing," she wrote. "We hope for better days," she added. The envelope, resealed with an official Nazi stamp bearing a swastika, confirmed his fears. His family had been sent 500 miles east to Poland. For Paula Steinfeld, the last hope of securing a visa for her daughter Irma to England in the summer of 1939 was shattered. 2 days before Irma's ship was to depart, Germany invaded Poland. This suspended all commercial ship traffic. Irma was forced to return to Josbach. There, Jewish properties, including their family home, were confiscated. They were confined to an upstairs bedroom above their former store. The German invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941 further sealed off escape routes through Eastern Europe. Disturbing rumors circulated about the fate of Jewish families. Thousands of German Jews had made perilous journeys. They found themselves refugees in an uncertain world. While the US remained largely isolationist, the global conflict was intensifying. For those trapped in Europe, the escalating danger foreshadowed the horrors to come. The haven of America for many Jewish refugees was a land of bewildering newness and unexpected challenges. While the Statue of Liberty promised freedom, The reality of American isolationism before Pearl Harbor often left new arrivals like Victor Brombert feeling a disconnect. President Roosevelt spoke of national security, but was it truly understood? Martin Selling wrestled with the intricacies of the New York subway and self-serve stores. These were minor but persistent hurdles in a world turned upside down. Then, on December 7, 1941, the attack on Pearl Harbor shattered America's neutrality. It plunged the nation into a global war that profoundly reshaped the lives of these exiles. Germany's subsequent declaration of war on the US irrevocably transformed their status. Overnight, German refugees, those who had fled Hitler's terror, were classified as enemy aliens. For men like Martin Selling, who had already endured the living hell of Dachau, this bureaucratic absurdity was a fresh wound. He burned with a fierce desire to fight the regime that had stolen his past. He declared, "I want to be a bombardier, so I can drop bombs on German targets." Yet, his enemy alien status became a cruel barrier. It repeatedly blocked his attempts to join combat roles. Werner Angrus, too, found himself in a discriminatory alien detachment. He was relegated to menial tasks. He endured the hateful curses of drunken soldiers who called them Nazi pigs. He wrestled with the injustice. How had he ended up in such a situation, he wondered. These men, driven by a profound personal vendetta against the regime that had destroyed their lives and families, faced mistrust and prejudice even within the army they sought to serve. But Werner Angrus was not one to suffer injustice silently. His proactive report of these discriminatory practices to an investigating officer was a pivotal act of self-advocacy. It led to the swift disbandment of the alien detachment. It was a powerful challenge to the simplistic notion that all German-born individuals were potential enemies. It demonstrated a loyalty that transcended birthplace. The US Army, facing an urgent need for intelligence personnel, soon recognized the strategic value embedded within these German-speaking Jewish refugees. By mid-1942, a critical decision was made. They would be trained as indispensable intelligence assets. The establishment of Camp Ritchie's Military Intelligence Training Center in Maryland marked a profound turning point. This foreign enclave became a crucible. It transformed perceived enemies into highly skilled operatives. This was achieved through specialized training in interrogation and psychological warfare, known as IPW. Here, individuals with unique linguistic, cultural, and psychological understanding of the enemy were forged into a top-secret, decisive intelligence force. For Werner Angrus, the journey culminated in a deeply personal milestone. On October 5, 1943, he achieved naturalization as a U.S. citizen. He solidified his loyalty with a solemn oath. This act removed the final bureaucratic barrier to full participation. It was a powerful affirmation that loyalty was not solely defined by birthplace, but by conviction and action. As the year drew to a close, a unique force was being forged. These Ritchie boys, highly motivated and skilled German-speaking intelligence operatives, were ready to deploy to the European theater. Their existence debunked the myth that only native-born citizens could be effective intelligence operatives. It proved instead that those who had suffered most at the hands of the enemy often possessed the keenest insight and the fiercest will to fight. Their story was not merely one of survival, but of active strategic heroism. It was a testament to resilience and justice against persecution. The dawn of June 6, 1944, broke not with universal triumph, but with disarray and stark terror for many of the Allied forces. For the Ritchie boys, German Jewish refugees now serving as American intelligence operatives, the invasion of Normandy was a deeply personal crusade. They deployed as IPW teams. Their linguistic skills and profound cultural understanding, honed at Camp Ritchie, were now thrust into the crucible of the European battlefield. The urgency of D-Day had led to rushed preparations. It was a frantic scramble before the jump. Werner Angrus, having famously confronted General Gavin to secure his place on the jump, found himself among countless others, scattered far from their intended drop zones. The chaos of the 82nd Airborne's drop, with troopers landing miles off target, immediately plunged soldiers like Werner into isolated predicaments. It was a disorienting introduction to the war's brutal reality. Werner's parachute had delivered him into an enemy-held orchard. He now navigated a battlefield where his German accent and unauthorized Luger made him as suspect to bewildered American paratroopers as he was to the German forces he encountered. It was a cruel irony. It was a constant reminder of the fractured identity he carried into the fight, a German-speaking Jew fighting a war against his former homeland. His solitary journey, marked by tense encounters, underscored the immediate dangers and the profound psychological complexities of his role. Just 48 hours after the initial assault, Victor Brombert arrived on the easy red sector of Omaha Beach. He confronted a scene of carnage that defied any romanticized vision of war. The sheer scale of destruction, the bodies strewn across the sand, indelibly marked his spirit. It stripped away any bug for war he might have carried. It replaced it with a grim, singular focus on survival. His initial observations underscored the brutal realities of combat. They challenged the purely heroic narratives that often emerged from such conflicts. Yet even amidst this chaos, the Ritchie Boys were already at work. Their IPW teams, deployed rapidly with the invasion forces, immediately began interrogating newly captured German prisoners. Their unique linguistic skills and cultural insight were instantly vital. They cut through the fog of war to provide crucial intelligence on enemy positions, troop morale, and defensive plans. Guy Stern, facing his first interrogation, discovered the unpredictable dynamics of combat intelligence. A sudden artillery barrage, far from hindering, inadvertently shifted the power dynamic with a defiant German Wachtmeister. It affirmed Guy's belief that effective interrogation relied less on brutality and more on psychological acumen and timing. The push inland, however, was a brutal grind. Normandy's infamous hedgerows, ancient earthen barriers, dense with vegetation, turned every field into a killing zone. Allied forces, particularly the 2nd Armored Division, adapted fiercely. They pioneered innovations like the rhinoceros tanks, equipped with formidable blades to tear through the seemingly impenetrable network of hedges. This tactical adaptation was crucial in overcoming a terrain that favored the entrenched German defenders. Intelligence continued to prove its life-saving power. Stefan Louis' Order of Battle Team identified the movement of the German 260th Infantry Division. This allowed General Patton to strategically reroute his forces and avoid a potentially costly engagement. It effectively destroyed the division without a major battle. Similarly, the liberation of St. Lo, a critical bottleneck for the Allied advance, was significantly aided by a captured German medic's exceptionally detailed intelligence. It came complete with a hand-drawn map, but this breakthrough came at a devastating cost. Victor Brombert, from his half-track, witnessed the immense human toll of the carpet bombing that leveled the city. It left a moon-like landscape of utter desolation and immense civilian casualties. It was a grim testament to the price of strategic victory. By August 1944, the Ritchie Boys had unequivocally proven their indispensable value. Their unique ability to understand the enemy, born from shared language and often shared history, provided intelligence that directly influenced battlefield outcomes and saved countless Allied lives. Yet the fight through France was a costly, brutal slog. It reminded everyone that even with superior intelligence, victory came at a profound human price, paid in blood and shattered landscapes. The human element of understanding the enemy, the very core of the Ritchie Boys' mission, had proven invaluable. But the grinding warfare through France was far from over. The autumn of 1944 brought a deceptive lull to the European theatre. It fostered an Allied overconfidence that would soon prove catastrophic. A collective weariness, coupled with a belief that the German war machine was on its last legs, led to intelligence failures that cost thousands of lives. The ambitious gamble of Operation Market Garden, launched in September, had failed to secure the crucial Dutch bridges. It left a bitter taste of prolonged conflict instead of the promised rapid advance into Germany. Manny Steinfeld, a Ritchie boy assigned to a glider, had experienced this failure firsthand. His flying coffin belly flopped at over 100 miles per hour. It slid amid loud grinding and screeching before flipping over, throwing him clear but unconscious. He rejoined his team the next day, grimly concluding that parachuting wasn't so bad after all. The Wall River crossing alone had claimed more than 200 American lives in a single desperate daylight assault under relentless enemy fire. Troopers used rifle butts to row faster and helmets to bail out water from bullet holes in their flimsy boats. It took a full 2 weeks for ground forces to reach Nijmegen, This highlighted crippling logistical failures that left British paratroopers stranded at Arnhem. The human cost of this miscalculation was already mounting. Victor Brombert, seeking a brief respite from the war's demands, had taken an unauthorized jaunt to liberated Paris. There, he found a fleeting romance with Yvette, a woman with sad eyes below heavy lids. But his desperate attempt to escape combat by sabotaging an interview for a prestigious assignment backfired. Instead, he was reassigned to a combat unit near the German border. It was a far cry from his Parisian haven. He was furious at himself, pulled back into the grinding reality of war. That reality was nowhere more brutal than in the Hurtgen forest. There, from November 2, the US Army became mired in its longest single battle. GIs, many without proper winter clothing, endured rain, sleet, and freezing temperatures. They suffered in the cold, shaded dampness of the boggy forest floor, where the dense canopy blocked out the sun. Victor Brombert had witnessed the horror of mortar and artillery barrages. He saw the sickening sight of shell bursts exploding in treetops. He saw torn, bloody clothing and body parts left hanging in tree limbs like Satan's laundry. The carnage was so profound that some soldiers, too tired or scabbed to leave their foxholes, even inflicted wounds on themselves. It was a desperate act to escape the fighting. Over 30,000 American casualties later, the Hurtgen proved a grim testament to the fundamental underestimation of German resolve, particularly on their own soil. Despite these devastating lessons, Allied command remained stubbornly convinced that the Ardennes, a region of quiet valleys and quaint villages in Belgium and Luxembourg, was a kindergarten front. It was deemed suitable for green troops or divisions needing rest. This delusion persisted even as Ritchie Boy teams, including Victor Brombert's, gathered increasingly alarming intelligence. On December 15, Brombert's team reported a massive German troop build-up to 8th Corps headquarters in Bastogne. Their warnings were dismissed as a likely diversionary action. It was a tragic intelligence failure that debunked any notion of a quiet sector. The dawn of December 16, 1944, shattered that illusion with a sudden massive artillery barrage. What some initially mistook for a thunderstorm was, in fact, the beginning of Hitler's last desperate gamble. It was the Ardennes offensive, later known as the Battle of the Bulge. German forces, ghost-like in the reflective glow of searchlights bouncing off the clouds, and clad in snow-white camouflage, attacked the inexperienced 106th Infantry Division. Second Lieutenant John Seal, Sergeant Kurt Jacobs, a former Berlin law student, and technician 5th grade Murray Zappler, all Ritchie boys, were assigned to the 423rd Regiment. This regiment, along with the 422nd, had been deployed to this deceptively quiet front. It was marked by an ominous road sign. "You are entering Germany anemone country. Keep on the alert." The regiments were quickly encircled. They were cut off from their division headquarters. Colonel Charles Cavender, commanding the 423rd, radioed a desperate plea at 10:51 a.m. He asked for an airdrop of ammunition, food, and medical supplies. He emphasized, "We have no artillery." The plea went unanswered, blocked on all sides, without sleep or food, low on ammunition, and with wounded soldiers on the verge of dying. The situation became untenable. Cavender, reflecting on his World War I experience, stated, "I was a GI in the First World War. I want to see things from a soldier's standpoint." His fellow commander, Colonel George Deschanel, grimly remarked, "My poor men, they'll be cut to pieces." On December 19, facing insurmountable odds, both regiments were forced to surrender. This led to one of the largest mass captures in USK military history. 6,879 men were taken prisoner within days. Among those captured were Ritchie Boys Kurt Jacobs and Murray Zappler. After their capture, they were taken to a customs house. Hauptmann Kurt Bruns of the 18th Volksgrenadier, an ardent Nazi, assisted by Sergeant Werner Hoffmann, summarily executed them. Bruns chillingly declared, "Juden haben kein Recht, in Deutschland zu leben." The Jews have no right to live in Germany, he stated. It was a stark reminder of the deep-seated anti-Semitism that permeated the German military. The bodies of Jacobs and Zappler, later exhumed with their dog tags, served as tragic proof of this brutality. It underscored the chilling fear among Jewish Ritchie boys, many of whom had changed their German or Jewish names and destroyed personal clues before shipping overseas. Their capture was a nightmare made real. The complex identity struggles of German-born interrogators were further highlighted when Martin Selling faced suspicion about his loyalty. After a redeployment to Alsace-Lorraine, a report of Panzergrenadier was misinterpreted by stern-faced staff officers as an armored threat. It nearly called off a planned attack. Counterintelligence Corps investigators questioned Martin. They implied that his heavy accent might have caused him to misunderstand. They suggested they were looking to unmask a German spy. His assistant operations officer, Captain Orville Phobos, defended him. He explained that Panzergrenadier referred to motorized infantry, not tanks. He added that these units, having suffered heavy losses, functioned as regular infantry. Martin's experience underscored the constant need for German-born Americans to prove their patriotism, even as he confronted a captured SS captain, who, upon learning Martin was a former Dachau prisoner, became livid with rage. The captain venomously stated it was a shame Martin had ever been released. Amidst these widespread intelligence failures and escalating brutality, the Ritchie Boys continued their critical work. They adapted to a desperate and brutal enemy. Guy Stern, promoted to head Survey for Strategic Intelligence, developed innovative psychological tactics. He partnered with Fred Howard, another German-born Jewish refugee. They exploited the German soldiers' core fear, Sieg, or de Siberian, or victory, or Siberian. This was the dread of Soviet capture. This led to the creation of the Commissar Krukov persona. Stern, affecting a demented Russian accent, would feign an attack of apoplexy. He would shout at Howard, "You imbecile, what kind of sorry specimen are you bringing me? That Nazi won't even survive the transport to our Siberian salt mines," he would declare. He would tell the prisoner, "I feel sorry for you. You are still so young and probably throwing your life away." This psychological pressure often yielded a bounty of classified information. Another crucial discovery was the diary of Karl Lorn, an Austrian drafty and anti-Nazi. Translated and serialized, Lorn's diary provided invaluable insights into German morale. More chillingly, it detailed atrocities. Courses of murdered soldiers, he wrote, soldiers who, after an honest fight, had surrendered to our paratroopers. They were then turned over to the SS, who organized them for the purpose of the slaughter. He wrote, "There they lie, those US soldiers without weapons or helmets, evidently shot from behind, mute witnesses against a system of murder." He prophetically stated, "I know up above there is a higher tribunal, and I'm certain if we down here don't punish them, that a just Lord will do it unfailingly." Lahn's diary debunked the myth that all German soldiers were fanatical Nazis. It revealed the presence of conscripts, reluctant participants, and anti-Nazis. The Battle of the Bulge, Hitler's last major offensive, had inflicted heavy losses and prolonged the war into the nuanced. Human-centric intelligence gathered by the Ritchie Boys became even more critical. Their unique understanding of the enemy, born from shared language and often shared history, provided insights that were indispensable in understanding a desperate and brutal foe. It proved that even in the face of widespread Allied overconfidence, precise human intelligence could illuminate the path forward. The spring of 1945 brought with it a final brutal reckoning to the European theatre. The Allied advance, particularly the relentless charge of Patton's Third Army, tore through the collapsing German defences. It revealed the full, horrifying extent of Nazi atrocities. German arrogance, once a cornerstone of their ideology, crumbled under the sheer speed and unexpected might of American forces. Even in mid-December 1944, a captured German captain, interrogated by Martin Selling, had unwittingly provided crucial intelligence. His attempts to save face inadvertently accelerated Allied advance plans into the Saar region. This hubris proved fatal, as the war turned irrevocably against them. Werner Angres, a German-born American paratrooper who had endured capture and interrogation by the Germans, had already experienced the nuanced reality of the enemy. His own liberation in Cherbourg had been marked by a complex empathy. He refused to humiliate his former captor, a Sonderführer, who had shown him decency. This demonstrated that the German enemy was far from a monolithic entity. Martin Selling, for his part, had long solidified his commitment to the US. Through his naturalization, it was a pivotal moment of identity. Yet, the brutality of the regime he fought against was never far from his mind. His encounter with an SS Scharführer, who coldly justified the massacre at Oradour-sur-Glane, and a later confrontation with an SS captain who became livid with rage upon learning of Martin's Dachau past confirmed the depth of Nazi depravity and the personal stakes involved for these liberators. Even the famed Marlene Dietrich, on her USO tour in Stolberg, found a complex web of loyalties among Germans. Her warm reception from women and children challenged the simplistic notion that all Germans were fervent Nazis. The tide had indeed turned decisively. The 6th Armoured Division, part of Patton's relentless Third Army, had been abruptly ordered north in December 1944. They executed a critical pivot to defend the besieged city of Bastogne. This shift, against overwhelming odds and Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe's defiant nuts response, had helped halt the German offensive. It bought precious time. Yet, the psychological conditioning of Ritchie boys, trained to detach from emotion, was about to clash violently with the overwhelming human suffering they were about to witness for the soldiers of the 7th Army's 42nd and 45th Infantry Divisions. The approach to Dachau was a descent into an unimaginable hell. The air grew thick with an cloying, sickening stench. It was a harbinger of the horror to come. At the train yard, the grim reality of the Dachau death train materialized before their eyes. There were 30 railcars filled with decomposing corpses. This horrific scene, a stark and evocative metaphor for systematic inhumanity, marked a profound shift from the brutality of combat to the unspeakable reality of genocide. The train, delayed for 19 days, had carried thousands to their deaths. Only 1,300 of its inmates were able to walk upon arrival. The rest were reduced to skeletal remains in the overcrowded cars. Inside the camp, a brief but desperate battle with the camp's guards ensued. It was a final, futile act of resistance by the perpetrators against the inevitable. The revelations continued, each more devastating than the last. The discovery of Buchenwald and Wobbelin concentration camps by American forces exposed the horrific scale of Nazi atrocities to the world. The stench of death hung heavy over Wobbelin. It was a smell that officers accompanying Werner Angres found so overwhelming they rushed to the fence and vomited. Inside, 4,000 inmates, living skeletons, lay in their filth. Their bodies were bluish-black and thin as sticks, piled high or submerged in bubbling chemical pits. When German civilians from nearby Ludwigslust were forced to witness these horrors, their hollow denials of "we didn't know and no one told us" were brutally debunked. This was done by the undeniable evidence and the pervasive smell emanating from the camps. Chaplain George Wood's scathing address at the mass burial of 200 Wobbelin victims in the opulent palace gardens left no room for doubt. Though you claim no knowledge of those acts, you are still individually and collectively responsible for these atrocities, he declared. The sheer scale of trauma left an indelible mark on soldiers like Guy Stern and Stefan Louis, their professional detachment shattered in the face of such profound human suffering. As the Third Reich gasped its last, the strategic imperative for the 21st German Army, under General von Tippelskirch, was to avoid Soviet capture. On May 2, 1945, at Ludwigslust, this desperation led to a unique event in military history. General Gavin, commanding the 82nd Airborne Division, dictated the terms for the unconditional surrender of 150,000 German troops. It was an army group 10 times the strength of his single U.S. division. The following day, May 3, 1945, American and Soviet forces officially linked up in Grabow. This symbolized the final collapse of Nazi Germany. Manny Steinfeld, astride a Soviet tank, became an iconic image of this joyous, surreal meeting. Werner Angres, upon hearing of Hitler's suicide, raised a glass and declared, "Long may he rot." Yet, even amidst the triumph, the pursuit of justice was paramount. The trial and execution of Hauptmann Kurt Bruns for the murder of Ritchie boys, Kurt Jacobs and Murray Zappler, demonstrated an unwavering commitment to prosecuting war crimes and establishing accountability. Bruns, whose anti-Semitic declaration Juden have kein Recht in Deutschland zu leben chillingly confirmed his motive, was convicted. Crucial evidence came from witnesses like Heinrich Kauter and informant Anton Korn. His execution by firing squad on June 14, 1945, served as a grim but necessary precedent. Nazi Germany had unconditionally surrendered. Its military might was shattered, and its hateful ideology exposed. But the full horror of the Holocaust was now irrevocably revealed to the world. It shifted the focus from military conquest to a monumental task of accountability, justice and rebuilding. The moral degradation of Germany under Nazi rule was laid bare. It left a legacy of profound loss and an enduring call for remembrance. The roar of guns had fallen silent across Europe, but for the German Jewish refugees who had fought against their former homeland, the war's end was not a liberation from conflict. It was a profound shift to a different kind of battle. It was the personal quest for justice, memory, and the ghosts of their past. The psychological and emotional scars of war and atrocity, far from fading, deepened in the quiet aftermath. They shaped their lives and their unwavering commitment to human rights. For Second Lieutenant Martin Selling, a man who had survived the horrors of Dachau, the end of the fighting marked the beginning of an agonizing search. He returned to his hometown of Leerburg, a place once familiar, now alien. Former neighbors, some whose families his own father had helped, offered only cold shoulders and anti-Semitic sentiments. The devastating truth of his aunt and cousin's fate transported to Stutthof concentration camp in the summer of 1942 was a fresh wound. It was a stark reminder of the personal cost of Nazi policies and the enduring cruelty of human indifference. His later reunion with his cousin Ignaz, a survivor of Stutthof, brought forth details too horrific to comprehend. Yet Martin wrestled with them, understanding that this was the true, agonizing legacy of the conflict. He would dedicate his memoir to Nemesis, the goddess of fate and retribution, and to the United States Army. It was a testament to his enduring quest for accountability. Guy Stern, too, returned to Hildesheim, the city of his childhood, as a U.S. Army officer. The jeep ride into the city brought an eerie sensation. The place was familiar, yet utterly unrecognizable. It was a landscape of ruins where his century-old synagogue had once stood. Amidst the devastation, the Ebeling family, who had embraced him warmly, delivered the crushing news. His family, deported to the Warsaw Ghetto, had likely perished in Treblinka. His mother's last poignant words, "We hope for better days," were now a testament to a hope tragically unfulfilled. The barren lot where his synagogue once stood was not just a physical void, it was a gaping hole in his soul, a symbol of his heritage's complete destruction. The Ritchie Boys and other military government personnel found themselves at the forefront of denazification. It was a monumental task that debunked any notion of an immediate return to normalcy. Stefan Louis, an MP, methodically rounded up former Nazi bloc leaders in war-torn Aschaffenburg. He encountered a pervasive, infuriating denial. "Ich bin kein Nazi," they would claim, or "we didn't know." Their hollow words were often contradicted by the very air of unspoken complicity that hung over the shattered towns. This was not merely about identifying perpetrators, it was about confronting a society in denial. It was about assisting the traumatized survivors. It was about rebuilding a moral framework from the ashes. It was a period where a woman, her legs terribly scarred, pointed to a well-dressed man. She exposed a Nazi doctor who had performed human experiments. This led to his arrest. It was a chilling example of the quiet, persistent pursuit of justice by the victims themselves. One such moment of profound individual justice unfolded in Boisenberg. Margarete Buber-Neumann, a survivor of Ravensbrück concentration camp, spotted Ludwig Ramdow. He was the Gestapo chief notorious for his cruelty. Her blood rushed, her heart pounded. She pleaded with American soldiers, "Bitte verhaften Sie diesen Mann." "Ich war eines seiner Opfer," she cried. Manny Steinfeld, an 82nd Airborne Order of Battle Team member, responded. He pursued Ramdow and confronted him with a decisive Hände hoch. Ramdow's initial denial, "Frau Buber, you do me wrong. I also once was against the Nazis," crumbled under Margarete's graphic, harrowing testimony. His subsequent conviction and execution on May 3, 1947, was a crucial, if rare, moment of retribution for concentration camp crimes. It was a testament to the enduring power of a survivor's voice. The experiences of these German Jewish refugees, who had fought with such fierce loyalty against their former homeland, profoundly shaped their post-war lives. Many channeled their unique insights and resilience into intellectual and professional pursuits. They became successful academics, writers, and professionals dedicated to education and remembrance. Werner Angris became a history professor, ensuring the lessons of the past would not be forgotten. Victor Brombert, a professor, was honored as a Knight of the Legion of Honor. His journey from stateless refugee to esteemed scholar was a powerful narrative of triumph. Stephen Louis, a CPA, spoke to thousands of schoolchildren. He shared his story to prevent history from repeating itself. Guy Stern, a distinguished professor of German studies, returned to Hildesheim in the 1960s. He sought to separate the gold of German culture from the dirt and toxin of the Nazi years. He witnessed the symbolic re-emergence of the thousand-year rose, its roots having survived the cathedral's destruction. Stern's later honorary citizenship of Hildesheim and his curation of the secret heroes exhibits cemented the Ritchie Boys' legacy. Their collective lives stand as a testament to resilience, intellectual contribution, and the vital importance of recognizing the diverse and often overlooked heroes of World War II. They implicitly challenged simplistic, purely heroic narratives of war by revealing the complex, deeply personal motivations of those who fought. Yet, the profound psychological and emotional scars of war and atrocity continued to impact these individuals. Martin Selling, years later, visited Dachau with his family, but he was so overcome by too many ghosts that he had to leave. Manny Steinfeld, discovering the official records of his mother and sister's deaths in Stutthof, found solace in his 13 descendants. It was a defiant act against the Nazis' attempt to wipe out his lineage. Werner Angres, reuniting with his emaciated mother and brothers in Amsterdam, received the devastating news of his father's death in Auschwitz. The official cause of heart failure was a chilling euphemism for systematic murder. These lingering wounds shaped their perspectives. They fueled an unwavering commitment to human rights and ensuring that such atrocities would never again be repeated. The war was over. But the personal reckonings, the pursuit of justice, and the commitment to memory had just begun. These German Jewish soldiers, who had fought not just for a country, but for the very soul of humanity, left a lasting legacy of vigilance against hatred. They left an appreciation for the unique contributions of those who dared to fight back. They transformed their profound losses into a powerful, enduring call for remembrance.